The Galactic Military Academy's central courtyard buzzed with the nervous energy of first-cycle cadets. Species from across 40 star systems had gathered, their varied forms creating a tapestry of scales, fur, chitin, and crystalline structures beneath the triple suns of Arcturus Prime. Among them, small groups huddled protectively around their issued supply crates, eyes darting toward the shadowed archways where upperclassmen were known to lurk. Saren stood slightly apart from the main cluster of cadets, her human frame appearing deceptively slight compared to the towering Krenth warriors and armored Vexillians around her. She examined her datapad with calm indifference, seemingly unaware of the predatory gaze fixed upon the courtyard from the western colonnade. Corin crouched in the shadows, his violet eyes gleaming with anticipation. The young Zarkothi's obsidian fur rippled as he gestured silently to his pack of cubs. They were not true cubs in the juvenile sense. The term was one of pride among the Zarkothi, denoting their elite hunter caste. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall, their muscular frames coiled with lethal grace, retractable claws glinting in the filtered sunlight. "The Vexillians first," Corin whispered, his voice a low growl that resonated in frequencies most species couldn't perceive. Their supplies contained the protein synthesizers. Quick strikes, scatter-pattern delta. The cubs around him nodded, their hunting instincts honed through generations of apex predation on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. This was tradition, a rite of passage where senior cadets tested the awareness and resilience of newcomers. The Academy turned a blind eye to it, considering it valuable training. Corin's pack moved like liquid shadow, flowing from the colonnade in perfect formation. The first Vexillian never saw them coming. In seconds, 3 supply crates vanished, carried away by cubs who seemed to materialize and dematerialize at will. Shouts erupted across the courtyard. "There!" a Krenth cadet bellowed, pointing with one of his 4 arms. But the cubs were already gone, circling back for another run. Corin felt the familiar rush of the hunt, the primal satisfaction of outsmarting prey. His pack had never failed a hazing run. They were the pride of the 3rd cycle, legends among the upperclassmen. "Again," he commanded. The crystalline cluster near the fountain. The cubs burst forth, and more crates disappeared. Panic rippled through the first cycle cadets. Some tried to form defensive circles, but they were disorganized, their multi-species communication breaking down under pressure. This was exactly the kind of chaos the exercise was meant to expose. Saren still hadn't moved. Corin noticed her then, really noticed her. The human stood with her back to a stone pillar, datapad lowered now, watching the chaos with dark eyes that tracked movement with unsettling precision. She had positioned herself perfectly, back protected, clear sightlines in 3 directions, supplies tucked behind her against the pillar base. Interesting, Corin thought, but ultimately futile. "The human," he said, a predatory grin spreading across his muzzle. "Let's see if their species lives up to the rumors." Humanity was relatively new to the Galactic Coalition, their planet barely a century into first contact. They were considered physically unremarkable, no natural armor, no enhanced strength, no specialized predatory adaptations. Just soft, slow bipeds who had somehow clawed their way to industrial spaceflight through sheer stubborn persistence. The pack moved in from multiple angles, a textbook flanking maneuver. Corin himself led the central approach, trusting his cubs to seal off any escape route. The human supplies were of particular interest. She had been issued specialized equipment for her species' unusual metabolic needs. They were 10 feet away when it happened. Saren cleared her throat. That IT wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was a single, soft sound, the kind a teacher might make when students weren't paying attention. A gentle ahem that somehow cut through the chaos of the courtyard like a blade through silk. Every cub froze mid-stride. Corin felt it immediately, an instinct so deep it bypassed conscious thought. His fur stood on end, ancient prey recognition patterns firing in his brain despite being born of apex predators. That sound, that subtle vocalization, carried something his evolutionary programming recognized and feared. The human hadn't moved. She simply stood there, one eyebrow slightly raised, arms crossed loosely over her chest. Waiting. "What?" Corin started, but his voice caught as Saren's eyes met his, and he saw something that made his blood run cold. There was no fear there, no panic. Just infinite patience and the quiet confidence of something that had never needed to be afraid. Her lips curved into the smallest smile. Not cruel, not mocking, but knowing. She cleared her throat again, more deliberately this time. Point one of Corin's cubs whimpered and stepped backward. Then another. The pack's formation, perfect moments ago, dissolved as each hunter responded to instincts millions of years old. Instincts that whispered of persistent predators, of creatures that didn't need speed or claws because they simply never stopped coming. Stand down, Corin heard himself say, his voice rough. But leader, one cub protested. I said stand down. The words came out sharper than intended, driven by a primal need to retreat that Corin didn't fully understand. Saren uncrossed her arms slowly, deliberately. She picked up her data pad again, glanced at it, then back at Corin. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, conversational, tinged with an accent from old Earth. Smart choice, she said simply. The courtyard had gone silent. Other cadets, both victims and observers of the hazing, stared in disbelief as the legendary cub pack retreated from a single unarmed human who hadn't even raised her voice. That Corin's mind raced, trying to rationalize what had just happened. They were hunters, elite warriors, physically superior in every measurable way. Yet every fiber of his being screamed at him to withdraw, to not engage this particular prey. Later, in the barracks, he would research humanity's evolutionary history. He would learn about persistence hunting on the African savanna, about endurance that allowed humans to chase prey to exhaustion across dozens of miles. He would read accounts from prey species on Earth, about the terror of being hunted by something that tracked you relentlessly, day after day, never stopping, never tiring, always coming. He would understand that humans hadn't evolved as ambush predators or apex hunters. They had evolved as something far more terrifying, patient, relentless, adaptable. They were the species that hunted everything else by simply refusing to give up. But in that moment, in the sun-drenched courtyard of the Galactic Military Academy, Corin only knew one thing with absolute certainty. His pack had just encountered something ancient and primal, something that wore the mask of civilization but remembered, deep in its genetic code, what it meant to be the thing that never stopped hunting. Saren returned to her datapad, dismissing them entirely. The message was clear, they weren't worth the effort. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The cubs retreated to the shadows, their pride wounded but their instincts vindicated. Behind them, the humans stood alone in the courtyard, surrounded by her untouched supplies, and the other cadets gave her a wide berth for the rest of the day. In the months that followed, Corin and his pack would become Saren's most loyal allies. Not out of fear, precisely, but out of deep, instinctive respect. They had learned what the galaxy was slowly beginning to understand. Humanity might not have claws or armor or overwhelming strength, but they had something far more dangerous. The patience of a species that had spent 1,000,000 years learning that everything, eventually, grows tired and slows down. Everything except them.